Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're going to recap this week in cannabis from February 21st to the 28th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, all I ask is that you leave a like on the video, as it really helps out my channel. And then if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, make sure you subscribe. But then I'd recommend going back and watching episodes 3 and 4 of Reality Check Cannabis in 2020 to introduce yourself to U.S. multi-state operators and then Canadian licensed producers. These are the companies that can legally grow, sell, and distribute cannabis. And that way you can learn about them and watch episodes of This Week in Cannabis leading up until now. Because we've covered a lot, but this is as good of a sponsor as you can get from a U.S. organization. Because what Uncle Sam wants, Uncle Sam gets. And the IRS chief, Internal Revenue Services chief, says agency would prefer if cannabis businesses could pay taxes electronically. Yeah, no duh. So the head of the IRS told Congress this week that the federal agency would prefer for state legal cannabis businesses to be able to pay taxes electronically, as the current legal cash-based system under federal cannabis prohibition is onerous and presents risk to workers. Now, this to point out that a Republican from Ohio, who serves as the co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, said that barring cannabis companies from traditional cannabis services is inefficient for business and the IRS alike, obviously not to mention the ample opportunity for fraud and the abuse it creates. Yes, we know, right? That's what the Safe Banking Act is for. So Rettig replies the IRS would prefer direct deposits more so than receiving actual cash payments, as it's a security issue for the IRS. It's a security issue for our employers, or our employees, and our taxpayer assistance centers. They get the money, then they have to transport it themselves. It's a security issue also for the hundreds of thousands of cannabis workers in the industry that can't open bank accounts or get treated normally because they work in cannabis. So this is, again, I see this as amazing. This is a sponsor from one of the biggest U.S. organizations. And again, what Uncle Sam wants, Uncle Sam gets, because tax money makes the U.S. go round. So Todd Harrison, another tweet that's just very relevant to that coming after. And again, this is speculation. This is not fact. But we've heard timeframes before from CEOs like Kim Rivers from Trulieve saying 60 to 90 days, and this would have been, I don't know how many days ago, but three little birds have whispered that the Safe Banking Act will be introduced as a standalone bill the second week of March, and that's less than 2 weeks away. So again, we just have to wait and see whether, his sources, again, obviously not confirmed, but this echoes what Brady Cobb Law offered last week in Clubhouse, so our eyes are wide open. Got to see the language, of course, but again, this doesn't say that it's coming soon, but with what Kim Rivers is saying and what the CEOs seem to know, and, this sort of news is very helpful for this. So we just got to hope that the safe comes sooner than later, which would be fantastic. Now, internationally, we've got more countries talking about cannabis. Now, Mexico was supposed to sign their bill in February and hopefully legalize by then, but it seems that this has been pushed back to April. So, hey, if you're a cannabis investor, you're so used to these delays. But to point out, Mexico is looking to legalize by April. So we have April 1 as another deadline. April 1 is an important deadline for New York to hopefully legalize, and now for Mexico to sign that bill into legislation. So not going to dive into much more because that's all it really says, but we have an update from Mexico, which I wanted, which is great. Now, Morocco aims to legalize cannabis for medical and industrial use, which is awesome. They aim to do this, to give help impoverished farmers in the Rif Mountains, considering a growing legal global market for the substance. And again, this comes after the vote in December for the UN and the World Health Organization to deschedule cannabis and allow it as a medicine. So this is just big because countries are paying attention. How can we, speed up our economies? Grow cannabis, grow hemp, yes. The Morocco cabinet is expected to approve the bill next week. The bill seeks to improve farmers' incomes and protect them from drug traffickers. Presently, traffickers control the cannabis trade. And again, it cuts out the illegal market, the black market. It takes sales away. So that's just great news out of Morocco. And for the London exchange is open. Now, apparently London is open, explores the path for successful medicinal cannabis and CBD companies seeking to list on the London stock markets this year. This is great news because it's opening up this whole idea and concept in the UK. And I've got some UK investor friends that are taking advantage. Now, am I going to invest in any of these companies? No, absolutely not. Because again, the people that are going to make money from this first rush of news are the people that have starting these companies and have shares at 5 cents. They're going to make money when they run up to 25 cents or to $1, right? Point is, I've said this many times, if the companies are not making revenue yet, do not bother. Do not touch it. Same goes for psychedelic mushroom stocks right now. Again, if there's no revenue, I'm not going near it, but I just wanted to point out that this is news. You're going to be like, oh my God, this news is huge. This is amazing. But I think it's just more important to check are these companies actually bringing in revenue? Is there any money being made? Otherwise, this is just news, and earlier investors are going to sell their shares once more people start buying on. That's sort of how that works, but just want to point out that as a UK investor, I think trading 212 allows you access to US MSOs. like Trulieve, like Green Thumb, like Cresco, and like Cureleaf. So I would certainly recommend, if you're in the UK, to consider that option. But again, it's good awareness. The conversation is starting. UK investors want access to cannabis markets, and this is positive for the UK opening up their own potential medical and adult use market. But is it legal in the UK yet? No, it's not legal. So again, this is buy the news type of stuff, but I'm not buying it at all. Great stuff though. So now to jump to Tom Engel again, the writer for, or I think he founded Marijuana Moment, but now nearly half the states, 23, are now considering bills to fully legalize cannabis, not decriminalize or allow medical use, with several more expected soon. Now, there are a lot of states, and I decided to just try and compress this section because it can take more time, but New Mexico and what was the other state? Kansas have introduced, well, New Mexico was more for legalizing adult use, Kansas was for medical, but those are states that for the first time just bring up the conversation, which is what we want to see. But hey, again, as New Jersey followed in there, or as New Jersey basically did what they needed to do and hit their deadline, as we mentioned, Connecticut governor touts cannabis legalization ahead of the first hearing at a press conference. Well, to build support for his plan to legalize cannabis, the Connecticut governor Ned Lamont and other backers described the proposal as a thoughtful, data-driven measure. It's been a long time coming. Yeah, no, you just needed New Jersey to do it, and now you're doing it. That's the simple truth. But hey, again, it's great. It's progress, and we still have New York, who's likely to follow Connecticut, especially if Connecticut goes first. And we have April 1 to expect for that. That's literally like a month away, which is crazy. Now, D.C. Mayor introduces legislation to decriminalize adult use cannabis sales. Very interesting, but this doesn't legalize it. So you would be creating a legal, you'd just be creating a really big black market, which makes no sense. So people can grow their own and supply their own, or you can have, organized crime. But anyways, it doesn't make sense to me, but pointing out, if the Safe Cannabis Sales Act of 2021 is passed by the end of the year, adult use cannabis sales could begin in October 2020. So maybe adult use is already legal in DC, and that was one of those, as it's not a state, it's treated differently. I don't know. Fill me in if I'm wrong. But anyways, DC talking about it. That's good news. Pennsylvania lawmakers to introduce adult use cannabis bill. Main thing to point out, adult use, so this would be for legalizing for recreational. Pennsylvania has 12 million people. That's a large population. That is something that we want to look forward to because, again, that is opportunity, and Pennsylvania already has medical legal. So they've got a great foothold there already, and they want to see some progress. Now, cannabis legalization proposal in Maryland is introduced to the General Assembly, and Maryland has a population, I think, 6.8 million. So again, this is just a bigger market that already has medical established, and all they got to do is flip the switch and open up the legal adult use. And then lastly, Alabama Senate, Bama, approves medical cannabis legalization bill, coming out of one of the reddest states you can imagine. This is great. On Wednesday, they approved the bill to legalize cannabis in the state. So at least you will have less opioid overdoses in Alabama. Guarantee that, and I'm very happy to announce that. So one thing to point out, J Tao, the rapper, great. So like this was true. Right as New Jersey announces, and this is big for the U.S. Look at how just MSNBC, or maybe it's CNBC. Yeah, it's not MSNBC. It's CNBC. But just look how out to lunch these news anchors are. They have no idea what's actually going on.
Cannabis stocks, in the meantime, surging today, right across the board. Earlier this week, New Jersey became the latest state to legalize and decriminalize marijuana use and possession after Governor Phil Murphy signed legislation into law. Joining us now.
So I do apologize that the sound quality is very bad, but basically she's recapping, look, this is another milestone. New Jersey just legalized. She doesn't know that that's going to cause Connecticut, New York, and all that. And then look who they bring on to talk about, not Cureleaf CEO Boris Jordan, not any US MSO CEO.
An exclusive interview to talk more about the state of the industry and the crazy stock prices. Aphria CEO Irwin Simon and Tilray CEO Brendan Kennedy. Gentlemen, good to have you.
Really? Aphria and Tilray?
Like, seriously, you bring in the Canadian CEOs to talk about the developments in the US market? Like, obviously they know about it, but it just makes me wonder, right? And one thing to point out, that this is super interesting, and I just want to give the contrast, because powerful House Dem bought cannabis stocks after pushing decriminalization. Now, this tries to make it sound like he's a really bad guy, but like when you read between the lines, it's just a guy that's like, oh wait, we just passed a bill, which means cannabis is going to be possibly legal soon, and this is a growing industry. There's money to be made. Yeah, no doubt. Like, it's really easy to come to that conclusion. But so just the chair of the House, the powerful House Budget Committee, recently purchased $60,000 worth of stock in cannabis-related companies while at the same time supporting decriminalization of the drug. I think this is actually good. He's not using insider information. He's literally passed a bill and probably watching TV. But this is the funny part. John Yarmouth Democratic Kentucky bought between 1,000 and 15,000 worth of shares in the Canadian licensed producers. He bought Aurora, Canopy, Kronos Group, and Tilray, the companies that are the most expensive and have the most downside, according to this disclosure form. And the purchases were made a little over 2 months after the House passes the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, a bill co-sponsored by Yarmouth in September, which seeks to decriminalize and deschedule cannabis. The measure has not yet been voted on in the Senate. Now, I got to point out, this is very different than last year when those two politicians in February sold all of their investments before the COVID crash. Like, that should be illegal, 100%. That's insider trading. But really what this just tells me is this is a guy that is, paying attention to what he's doing and realizing that, like, wait, if we do push for legalizing cannabis, descheduling, and all of this cannabis reform, which is good for America, right? That's the most important thing. Then if he puts his money in these companies, but he doesn't even understand that these Canadian companies aren't in the U.S. yet. So what this tells me is that John Yarmouth has no idea about the U.S. MSOs, which is just like he's just a guy investing based off of what he sees on TV. And, nothing more, nothing less. So just to point out, like 3 years ago, when I didn't know anything about investing, or I didn't self-educate, I would have just easily said, oh no, this is so bad, you can't allow that. The government, But yeah, no, that's changed completely because I realized something. I can do exactly what he's doing. In fact, I can take my time and I can do it better than he's doing. So I just wanted to try to distinguish, like, there's definitely bad politicians, and there's been examples of politicians using insider information to make trades that should 100% be illegal. But something like this, when you actually break it down, that's really all this guy likely did. And I mean, what's stopping any of us, right? So I want to point out that with the proper education and understanding of how things work, you can make money. And then if you're a good person, hopefully, and then you get that money, you can do good things with it. That's sort of the hope, as opposed to, unfortunately, bad people making money and then wasting that. And anyways, just wanted to point that out. Let me know what you think about that. But like, essentially, I don't see this as insider trading. I see this as just him like, I want to do this because the long-term effects are better for the people. And I feel confident because we've literally just passed this bill kind of thing. And had he done this in September without knowing that the Dems would flip the Senate in January? Or wait, no, sorry. He said he did it in February. It said that he did it after 2 months after the bill, which would have been in October. So anyways, just pointing that out. Anyway, now we're going to move on. Trulieve Cannabis Corp announces release date, conference call. They are March 23rd. Okay, so this is awesome. We've got the third MSO to announce it. Actually, I'll just jump ahead. And Air is now announcing their earnings March 11th. So we have Curaleaf on March 9th, Air now on March 11th, Green Thumb Industries on March 16th, and now Trulieve on March 23rd. Cresco has yet to announce. Harvest Health and Recreation has yet to announce. So we don't know yet, but that's awesome. I like how they're spread out, so we could see these catalysts, like, the prices just kind of keep going on as all of these companies do well. Maybe there's a bought deal in there, maybe there's some information, but that's awesome. And I just want to point this out. Trulieve partners with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund to provide college scholarships. So again, if you're thinking about investing in these companies, these are groundbreaking companies. You don't see many companies donating to scholarship funding, leadership development in these underprivileged communities that they are trying to actually fix because, they're not even associated with the war on drugs. None of these companies. But they're just trying to prove that you can treat cannabis companies like any other pharmaceutical company or any other, tobacco or alcoholic beverage company, despite the fact cannabis is way healthier for you. But what this is doing, just, if you don't take the time to look, it's so easy to say that these cannabis companies are evil or, oh, they're just going to be another big industry. But yeah, well, that's just how the world is now. And you have to understand that. You got to learn how it changes and you got to learn to play the game. That's how it works. But what they are doing is so they've partnered with the nation's largest organization exclusively representing the Black college community. They'll donate $20,000 to help fund several college scholarships awarded to students who are attending one of the organization's member schools. So, it's an effort. It's an effort to right the wrongs of the war on drugs that Trulieve literally had nothing to do with, but Trulieve is still being affected by the unjust laws that are in place. But again, thankfully, folks, we're getting close to that changing. Now, I do not know much about how Innovative Industrial Properties works, as I mainly cover MSOs, and Innovative Industrial Properties is a real estate investment trust. But again, just wanted to point out is that the main thing you want to look for in these companies, and where you're going to see it is U.S. MSOs or U.S. companies, is this massive year-over-year and quarter-over-quarter growth. So just to point out, acquisitions and portfolio performance drive fiscal year 2020 100% or 162% year-over-year growth in total revenues, 191% in net income increase, and 180% in something about cash flow going in dividends kind of thing. I don't know what that stands for, but just wanted to point that out. So again, U.S. is where the growth is happening. If you're not seeing growth numbers like this, there's not as much potential upside, if they're trading at book value. Now, just to flip that and show a Canadian company in retrospect, Kronos Group's announced their Q4. You don't see any highlights of growth here because Kronos is a fascinating case of a company, and I'm pretty sure that Altria, the maker of Marlboro cigarettes and all those, basically Altria invested $1 billion, 2 billion Canadian in Kronos. At the same time, Constellation Brands invested $5 billion in Canopy. And what this tells me is that Altria is just going to buy out Kronos at some point. Kronos is property of Altria, and Altria is basically funding Kronos to figure out the science of the CBD vape technology, I believe, or that's what I think. But if we look at their revenue, total consolidated net revenue for this quarter, up 17 million from 7 million a year ago, for growth of 133%, but that's 9 million to 17 million. And truth is, Kronos is valued at $4.7 billion, and they're making, total year end, they made about 46 million this year. Gross profit, losing money, lost less money than they did last year. But just to point out again, cash and cash equivalents, they just keep getting fed cash from Altria, and that's what keeps them afloat. That's what kind of keeps Kronos a solid investment. That's why they have a massive cash float on their balance sheet. So that's why, despite being valued at 4.7 billion and only making 17 or 46 million for the whole year, people can still justify them being worth 4.7 because they have so much money on their balance sheet. Now, is Hexo blowing smoke on their Euro entry via Cannabis deal? Yeah, for sure. And I've pointed this out. It's like, Hexo making this announcement that they're buying them sounds good for Hexo in the moment. And if you don't understand the functions of Hexo, or, how there's so little growth in Europe right now until, more change actually comes, record shows Cannabis has yet to sell a gram on the continent. So yeah, on February 16th, shares of Hexo shot up 22% after the Ottawa-based producer drew big headlines for its $260 million all-stock deal to secure a foothold in Europe. The transaction gives Hexo immediate access to the European cannabis market through Cannabis local partners with an established facility in the European Union supplying pharmaceutical products to the European market. The deal is expected to close in Q2 of 2021. However, Cannabis' European business is set up through a complex joint venture arrangement that's still in the process of applying for final licenses to finally sell cannabis in the region. And so again, just to point out, I've said this many times for analysts, Hexo's European entry is underwhelming and overplayed. Most believe the real opportunity lies in the U.S. as the country's top lawmakers discuss federal legislation, because they sold $18 billion in cannabis in 2020 alone. And just to point this out, this runs similar to this whole idea of news is very appealing if you don't know the underlying story. But that's exactly how I feel about this. Yeah, would I consider this a good deal for Hexo? No. I mean, it doesn't make me want to turn my eye and invest in them now, right? So just trying to point that out, the real difference between these small LPs versus actual small MSOs. Fire and Flower enters U.S. cannabis market through strategic licensing partnership and acquisition option with American Acres. Just want to point this out because this is the second deal like Cannabis where new option to purchase drives retail expansion. But again, this is, of course, pending. The acquisition is expected to occur the federal legalization of cannabis, of adult use cannabis in the U.S. or when others permitted by policies of the Toronto Stock Exchange. So basically, it's an option, and they've made a deal so that, hey, if this happens in the U.S., legalization does come sooner than later, then we can exercise this deal and we buy that company. So it's just interesting. Makes me wonder, do the CEOs of Fire and Flower know something we don't? Much like Canopy CEO, they're very optimistic, and we're seeing that it looks like there's progress on the SAFE Act. All of these are just good things, and ultimately good momentum for this industry overall. And last thing to point out, Canopy has actually introduced a study, Global Registry for the Use of Spectrum Therapeutics, which is their medical brand for CBD, cannabis products with subjects with chronic pain. So their primary objective to describe patterns of physician selection of Spectrum Therapeutics, ST, their medical cannabis treatment regimen expressed as the average daily dose of THC and CBD in milligrams. And basically what they're saying is CBD and THC equivalent to painkillers? Can they have the same effect? And that's what they ultimately want to study, which is great. I almost wish that this study was introduced 2 years ago, because when you just look at how long this stuff takes. The actual study start date was November 25th, 2020. This is again why I'm cautioning people with shroom stocks. If you're up, consider selling for a loss just because. Estimated completion date, not till January 24th, 2023. And then study completion date would take till June 4th, 2023. So if you're invested in a shroom stock company and you don't know how long their trials are going to take for the results, you better go check that out. So anyways, it's good that Canopy is taking leading and getting the ball rolling with these, but you obviously got to look at the fine print and the details. Otherwise, you just might suffer a lot of opportunity costs. Now, I wanted to introduce this podcast episode because it was fantastic. They did, again, talk to Todd Harrison. I know I mentioned him a lot, but he is a genuine guy that has experience on Wall Street for many years, and since then, he's kind of just been doing his own thing, and he talks about his viewpoint with cannabis as like a medical ingredient, and just the future of it. I really like his input, so I would recommend watching that. Now, I found a company that I thought was such a good deal that I have to just show you a comparison of them, folks, and it's his Tilt Holdings. It's an MSO in the US that also has vape technology that does deal in the US and Canada. Now, main thing to point out is just look at Tilt, okay? The market cap is $225 million. So if you take the market cap, and then if you were to Google, how many outstanding shares does Tilt have? And then you divide the market cap by the number of shares, you get 70 cents. That's how we find the share price, right? So again, share price is not important. What's important is the market cap. And to compare, I just want to show you Columbia Care, another great MSO with a lot of potential. Their market cap is $2 billion. Okay, so as we can see, Columbia Care is worth 8 times more than Tilt because they're worth $2 billion. Tilt is worth $225 million. And if you add up $225 million, something like that, $8 billion, it would fit into $2 billion 8 times, right? Now, let's look at the financials. If we actually look at Tilt's financials, quarterly, they're not growing a ton. They're growing, though, substantially. But so far this year, they brought in $154 million in revenue. And they have a gross profit of 58, and they're increasing their profit over time. And, their operating income is a bit all over the place. But again, $154 million this year in total revenue after 3 quarters. And they're valued at $225 million. Unbelievable. Now, if we just jump over to Columbia Care to kind of compare, Columbia Care is valued at $2 billion. So, but their financials, they've only brought in $126 million this year, but their cost of revenue is extremely high. So they actually have not even turned a profit. And if you just look like, sure, their month-over-month growth looks a bit better, but their operating loss is much more. So ideally, it's like, Tilt, do you guys see the difference here? So 126 total revenue, negative profit, valued at $2 billion. While again, Tilt, bringing in 156 million, is valued at 225 million. So, I had $2,000 that I was planning to, again, average down into Cresco, but I found Tilt on Monday night when I was FaceTiming with my friend, and I was like, hey man, this is a really interesting company. I started looking into it, and then he was holding his vape. I said, can you show me that? And it was literally the same vape. He had bought it without realizing that it was Tilt's technology from one of the dispensaries in Canada. It was like one of those, okay, cool. And so just to zoom out, if we look at the 5 days, I ended up getting in at 69 cents on Monday or Tuesday. And it, like this past week, look how strong it's held. It has not dipped below 67 cents, which to me is fascinating. And we look at how much more volatile Columbia Care is. It's heavily up and down. And again, if we just zoom out 5-year chart, for whatever reason, when Tilt came out, people were very excited on it, and then it hasn't gone anywhere close to since. Where Columbia Care, zoom out, it's not as clear. So again, I'm just pointing this out. I did end up buying 2,300 shares worth, so it was about $1,800, just because I was like, you know what? If Tilt is making more money than Columbia Care, then Tilt has at least enough upside to multiply by go up by 8 times to match with Columbia Care. Now, again, it's hard to justify that in just straight comparison, but this is like if you were to compare 2 companies making the same amount of revenue, Columbia Care is valued at $2 billion and Tilt is valued at $225 million. That's like buying Tilt. Like, let's say Columbia Care is $1. It's worth $1. You're paying $1 to own a company that's worth $1. Whereas Tilt, you're paying like 15 cents to eventually own $1 in the future. So again, this is the idea of a company with a large margin of safety. They're undervalued, just in terms of I don't know how they're so undervalued, but they are. Now again, there's a lot of other factors to point out, but I just bring up this chart last, and since I got a new laptop, you should be able to see this nice and clear, hopefully. But if we go to Tilt, this is what I noticed. They have 81 million in debt, so if you subtract that 81 million in debt, they're still trading at their market cap. And from these prices, this is the US ticker. So the Canadian ticker would be more expensive. This would have been when Tilt trading in Canadian dollars was in the 70s range. So the prices since this was made fallen down. And then what I noticed, I was like, yeah, so if we were to look at what's Tilt actually worth, $376, and we subtract the debt, you're looking at $295. It's still trading at book value to its market cap. So there's no future growth baked in. If we go along, they've got one dispensary open with 3 licenses so they can still expand. But look at their projected revenues. For 2021, they're going to make $263 million. And for 2022, they're going to make $349 million. That's more than their book value right now. And if you look at their enterprise value to sales, they're literally trading at a 0.9 sales, even less than that since the drop. So this is a gift to you folks. Do your own research, obviously, but I did invest because all of these little things was like, wow. I'm going to take some more time later today to look through and just make sure that everything's good in their financial presentations. But I found Tilt and I was like, again, this is high risk, but it's so cheap. It's so cheap relative to, again, where Columbia Care is valued at $2.8 billion. Again, this is in US dollars, making similar numbers. Tilt is going to make more money than Columbia Care this year. And although Columbia Care is going to grow more in the next upcoming months, right, you can see that Tilt is not expected to grow as much, but Tilt is just trading at a significant value to what they're actually worth. So I know that was a lot, and I made this a bit longer than I wanted to, but I hope you find that valuable. Again, go do your own research. Don't just jump in. But obviously, everything I've presented is I looked to check through their website and stuff, and everything checks out. So there's nothing that I haven't found yet. But if you know something about Tilt that I don't, please comment in the description and let me know. Because obviously, it's either just a significantly undervalued company, which is a great opportunity, or there's just some crazy corruption going on behind the scenes that we don't know of. But considering, they have that vape technology, the intellectual property, and they're selling the vape to Canadian companies, plus having their own MSO operation. That diversifies them in the US, and I think that's a healthy company that is, again, just trading at a massive discount. So, folks, that is it for today. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos, and then I will catch you on Wednesday for midweek update of This Week in Cannabis. Have a great day, everybody.